Hello friends, welcome back to Technique. In this video, we'll be doing the camera review of the new Vivo X200 FE. So we have done a lot of videos on the Vivo X200 FE. We have compared with the Xiaomi 15 as well as the OnePlus 13s, two compact flagship devices in this price segment competing with the Vivo X200 FE. So let's see how good the camera experience is on the Vivo X200 FE. So this has the Zeiss tuning similar to the Vivo X200 and the 200 Pro launched in India around 6 to 7 months back. So this has some downgrades compared to those cameras, but it does have the Zeiss color tuning. So let's see how good that is. So before that, if this is your first time on this channel, do hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell icon to get notified of all the videos we publish. So let's begin. So first, let's have a look at the camera hardware of the Vivo X200 FE. Now the primary camera is a Sony IMX921 sensor, 1 by 1.56 inch sensor with f1.8 aperture, and you get optical image stabilization as well. Now the secondary camera is again a 50 megapixel shooter, Sony IMX882 sensor, 3x optical zoom, and then you also get 1 by 1.95 inch sensor, and this is 3x periscope telephoto lens. Now the third camera is an 8 megapixel ultra wide, which is kind of downgrade from the Vivo X200. It's a basic 8 megapixel ultra wide, and on the front panel you get a 50 megapixel shooter with f2.0 aperture. So that's the camera hardware of the Vivo X200 FE. So probably the downgrade is the 8 megapixel shooter. That's the major downgrade, but let's see how good the camera experience is. So let's start off with the camera samples. First, let's have a look at the daylight captures. So looking at the daylight captures, you can see here the Vivo X200 FE offers good details. The colors are very much rich and slightly saturated at times, especially the greens and reds. The sky colors are also quite okay, but again, once again, some areas it does produce saturated colors because by default the vivid mode is the one which we have selected, and that's a default mode. So if you want natural colors, you need to select the Zeiss color mode, and even in Zeiss color mode, here you can see here on the left we have the vivid mode, on the right we have the Zeiss color mode. While colors are more natural looking on the natural color, but then the HDR performance is also completely different on the natural color mode, making it a bit more better. So HDR performance is not very consistent across these two modes, and even in Zeiss color mode, some of the images have colors which looks a bit washed out, so it's not very accurate in color reproduction, both the vivid mode as well as the Zeiss color natural mode. So that is one area where Vivo could fix a bit in terms of color reproduction, but otherwise the Vivo X200 FE produces pretty good images. The images are detailed, sharp, and the textures are good. The overall quality definitely looks good, so there isn't much to complain. Now looking at the 3x telephoto, this does a pretty good job. Once again, you can see the sharpness levels are good, the dynamic range and colors, once again it looks slightly richer in tones, but not a major concern. Overall, I would say the 3x telephoto does a really good job in terms of overall details and sharpness levels. But when it comes to ultra wide, here you can see that the sharpness levels are kind of very much average, edges are kind of smoothened, and it doesn't look that great, especially with the 8 megapixel shooter. But one thing what is good is the color consistency across the three formats, or the telephoto and the primary camera and the ultra wide looks very similar. That's one thing which Vivo has done pretty good job here. Now moving on to the close-up images. Now here once again you can see here, especially in terms of close-up images, the color tones are completely different with the vivid mode. It's kind of completely saturated look, but again you can go with the Zeiss color mode. And now one thing what you notice is that even though it has 3x telephoto, you can't take macro images because the focal length is a bit too large, but you can take decent close-up images, and they come pretty good in terms of overall quality and details and sharpness levels. Now when it comes to portraits, now there are a wide range of portrait options available on the Vivo X200 FE. You can take a different focal length, different bokeh levels, the Zeiss mode included. So there are plenty of options. It's a very versatile camera in terms of the portraits. But one thing what you notice is that the skin tones, especially with bright sunlight, looks a lot warmer, and the skin tones are completely off actually. Even with the Zeiss color mode, it doesn't look that great in terms of the skin tones. This is one area where we need Vivo to fix things things better, because when we compared the Vivo X200 FE with other devices, we mentioned that the skin tones are not really accurate, especially when there is bright sunlight. Especially my skin tones look a lot brighter and reddish in nature. But when it comes to indoor portraits, that's where Vivo X200 FE does a pretty good job. And here you can see that the skin tones are really good and are true to nature. But outdoor portraits definitely looks a bit warmer in tone overall. So that is one area where Vivo needs to fix things. Now moving on to the low light conditions. In indoor light, it produces really good results. The images are sharp, crisp, and great details offered. And when it comes to extreme low light also, it maintains that low light nature and doesn't overexpose or over brighten the images. Looks pretty good. The sharpness levels and the contrast overall looks great. And the dynamic range also looks pretty good with the low light conditions. So overall, I feel low light experience definitely look good on the Vivo X200 FE. Now moving on to the selfies, the 50 megapixel selfie camera does a good job. Once again, here we feel the skin tones are much better than the portraits. They look more natural, and overall quality and sharpness levels looks great. The facial tones are done really well, and the overall light detection and also the dynamic range looks good. So selfies does a good job in terms of overall quality, and we are pretty happy with the X200 FE in terms of selfie performance. Next, let's do the video recording. Now it can record 4K 60 fps. You can see here it looks good. Stabilization is also quite okay, but the bitrate is not really that impressive considering that this is a device above 50,000 rupees. So bitrate could have been better. So overall, we would say video quality is not a very great strength of Vivo X200 FE. Overall, we feel OnePlus 13s and the Xiaomi 15 does a better job in terms of video recording when compared to the Vivo X200 FE. Now you can do 1080p 30 or rather 60 fps footage. Footage looks very similar. Quality and dynamic range looks good, but once again the bitrate is not really that impressive for a flagship level phone with a camera as the priority. Now let's also look at the telephoto lens. Once again, you can see here the sharpness levels are not that impressive on the telephoto lens. It looks slightly blurry in nature, and the bitrate once again was not that impressive. But overall, I would say for most part this does a decent job altogether in terms of video recording. So 4K 60 fps is available across both the cameras except for the ultra wide. Now ultra wide you can take videos only in 1080p 60 fps. This looks very decent actually. Once again, 8 megapixel shooter doesn't do that much of clarity, but it's kind of okayish performance, I would say. So this is the front facing camera sample taken with the Vivo X200 FE, and this can record videos in 4K 60 fps. So what you're seeing is the 4K 60 fps footage. You can judge yourself how good the clarity of the video is, and you can actually see there is a lot of breeze blowing, so how good the audio quality is. So that was a detailed camera review of the Vivo X200 FE. So as you can see here, it's a pretty good camera out there on the Vivo X200 FE, but it does have some shortcomings. One of these is the extremely boosted colors on the vivid mode. Obviously, you might say that vivid mode is for saturated colors, but the boosting is kind of inconsistent, and some of the Zeiss color mode also did have slightly higher colors compared to the Zeiss or rather the vivid mode. So it's kind of slightly inconsistent in terms of color reproduction, but still it produces pretty good results. And once again, the HDR tuning is good, but again it's slightly inconsistent over different modes available. So that's one area where we could fix a bit more, but I would say these are not things which would disappoint users on a regular basis. But in case you are really into camera or photography, you might notice it, but then otherwise it's quite okay. And the ultra wide angle camera is kind of very much average, I would say. Nothing much to write about that. It's 8 megapixel edges, you can see it's not very sharp and kind of softened image. So again, 8 megapixel ultra wide, it's just for that ultra wide camera, but it doesn't do a great job out there, but still okayish. Now there is no macro mode as such, but you can take 3x macros, but those are not very close because the focal length of the telephoto lens is slightly on the higher side, so you can't go very close taking macros. That's one area where X200 FE fails when compared to the X200. Apart from that, the selfie video in 4K 60 FPS doesn't have stabilization. That is one area where I feel Vivo hasn't done much of work, because 4K 60 FPS for selfie camera, when there are a lot of people doing vlogging, it should have been there. And apart from that, the primary camera and the secondary camera video footage was good, but then it is not as good as the Xiaomi 15 or the OnePlus 13s. So these are some shortcomings in the Vivo X200 FE, but as a whole I would say it's still one of the good cameras out there in this price segment. For casual users, this won't disappoint in any way. So that was my experience with the cameras on the Vivo X200 FE. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. Do hit that like button and also hit the subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in our next video. Have a great day.